Good morning and welcome in everyone to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It's Hump Day, it's Wednesday, and it was the perfect day for the SC matchups to finally get released. The one thing we knew, we knew that what Arkansas's home and away was last season and the typical uh, round robin home and away in season matchups have been. So we knew there would be at least a variation or two from what we would believe would happen. We had John Rothstein's reporting, excuse me, that Arkansas and Kentucky would only play one time, and then we're like, okay, that's a return game then for Bud Walton Arena because Arkansas played at Rupp last year in the one-off. So we know a lot, but we don't know a lot until we actually see it and it's formalized. And so that stuff got released today. So we're going to go through this. We're going to have looks like 18-0 to me. All right, that's a great opening comment. What a great opening salvo. By the way, before we dive into this, let's go ahead and congratulate the Diamond Hogs on moving into what is effectively the Final Four of the College World Series. Arkansas still got a heavy lift. They've never beaten LSU, tonight's opponent, in the College World Series. I believe they're 0-4. They're 1-3 against LSU this season, including a loss in Game 1 on Saturday in the opener of the College World Series. Arkansas, because it's double elimination and LSU's hanging out in the winners bracket, it means Arkansas's got to win twice. LSU needs one more win. And so Arkansas needs to win tonight. And then if they do, they'll play LSU again on Thursday, pick up a win there, and they advance to the best of three championship series, that starts over the weekend, I believe, on Saturday. On the other side of the bracket, the final two, it's down to Louisville and Coastal Carolina. I personally thought going into this College World Series, I don't talk much baseball, but I felt like LSU and Coastal Carolina were probably the two best teams, with Arkansas right there with an argument for that. But Arkansas's pitching has been outstanding. You remove the second inning against LSU in Game 1. You can't do that. That's not how it works. But if you just took that out and you took out, which even to a lesser degree, the ninth inning last night, and that big win over UCLA 7-3, Arkansas between those two innings, which is a lot of innings, 8 plus 9 in Gage Woods no hitter, near perfect game, 17 innings. You gave up a run in the 8th inning to LSU. There's just a lot, like 25 innings in between those two bad innings where Arkansas has given up one run. I mean, that's how good the pitching has been. The offense has been a little slow at times. Picked up some last night. So we'll see where this goes with LSU. Let me get off that soapbox. We're 3 minutes in. Thank you again for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. Let's jump right into this because we've talked a lot about the games we know about in the non-conference schedule and how impressive it is. A few days ago, I did one of these segments based almost solely on comparing that non-con to back in 94-95, the greatest non-conference schedule ever, and one of the toughest seasons beginning to end, including getting to the national championship game for a second straight year. The entirety of that schedule was the toughest in Arkansas history, period, point blank, end of story. And that this one may be brewing to give that one a run for its money, not quite yet. And there's more non-conference we need to learn. And we know how good the league is now. It's better now than it was back then. It certainly was last year when you got a record 14 SEC teams into the NCAA tournament, 9 to 10 teams ranked in the top 25 at any given time. And then you had half of the Final Four field, and you had the eventual national champion in Florida. This is going to be another really strong SEC. Will it be projected as good as last year? I don't think so out of the gates, but out of the gates last year, it wasn't projected to be as good as it ended up being. So that could cut both ways, right? It's going to be projected to be really strong. And I use the Rothstein top 45 because he updates it daily, and we don't have AP or coaches yet. We're not going to have that for months. But for now, let's take at face value that how Rothstein has some of these teams ranked coming into it. And when you look at the SEC matchups, the headliners to me is this drop today, all 18 matchups. The headliners are you're getting Auburn home and away, so round robin. You're going to host Auburn, and you're going to play on the road again. Last year, you came close on the road, and so you're going to be back in Auburn, Alabama, but you're also going to get them in Bud Walton Arena. And we were talking about in a previous segment also that when you looked at the non-con edition of Houston, we already knew about Duke, two of the Final Four teams last year, and you're playing Auburn and Florida, the other two Final Four teams last year. we said Arkansas is going to at minimum play 4 games, one each against each of the Final Four. And then I brought up the possibilities. But if you get a round robin with either Auburn or Florida, you will actually play 5 games against all, and at least one against each of the Final Four teams last year. That's exactly how this is playing out. I'm glad I brought it up then, because something we can look back on and say, yeah, apparently Arkansas's schedule, when you look at the SEC as it's laying out right now, is maybe even a little tougher, because yeah, Auburn, what they did last year doesn't necessarily convey to this upcoming season, other than Rothstein has them ranked 15th in his top 15. And we're going to look and examine top 25 teams today in terms of how that looks in the league. But the headliner, to me, the biggest headliner we've already talked about is Arkansas hosting Kentucky. We already knew that was going to happen, and we knew that we learned from Rothstein that it was going to be a one-off, not playing in Rupp. They should play twice a year, home and away every year is my opinion, but I don't get to make that call. So the big news is, and Rothstein has Kentucky preseason ranked number 12. One spot behind Arkansas at number 11. So he's got Kentucky 12th. And again, officially today, the U of A puts out the press release. Kentucky at home at Bud Walton Arena in a one-off. So that and the Auburn home and away are probably, in my opinion, the two at the top of your headline making, matchups here when you look at this. And we're going to go through all of it. Other matchups that are kind of more significant, in my opinion, right now, based on what we think the strengths of these teams will be. Number 16, Tennessee, will play at Bud Walton Arena. It's a one-off. We know that Arkansas opened the SEC play last year and got blown out on the road at Tennessee, at that time ranked number 1 in the country. Rothstein has the Volunteers preseason number 16. Zakai Ziegler's applying for his 30th year of college eligibility. And with these new rules and NIL, and it's really a pro game and this and that, who knows what's going to happen there. But that's a guy you hope you don't see again. You hope he's not on the court at Bud Walton Arena as a player, maybe as a grad assistant or assistant coach or whatever, special assistant to the head coach if he doesn't have a path to a pro career. But Arkansas will host 16th ranked Tennessee. Again, the rankings, these are based on Rothstein. 24th ranked Texas, according to Rothstein. They're getting Tremont Mark back. Remember him, the former Hog? Speaking of playing more years than you ever thought a college player could play, he'll be back at Texas. Rothstein has the Longhorns ranked 24th. And that'll be a game where Arkansas once again will play the Longhorns, now in year 2 in the SEC for Texas, in Bud Walton Arena. Remember, last year it was home and away. And both of those games were kind of crazy down the wire. And Arkansas actually at home ended up going to overtime and winning that game. So Arkansas swept Texas last year, home and away. You get them at home this year. And I guess that's a good thing if this is going to be truly a strong Texas team when we look at it from a ranking standpoint right now, top 25. There are other teams in Rothstein's 45 in the SEC that he has ranked outside, in the 30s, low to mid, high 30s. I won't really specifically go into that. I'm going to focus on top 25 for now. He is appealing the the Ziegler thing's great. Yeah, I thought Ziegler was, they should have already built a statue to him and he's been long gone, right? But they did. None of that's happened. All right. So those home games, those are the headliners, and of course, Auburn home and away. And then the headliners on the road that jump out at me immediately. Obviously, you're playing at number 4, Florida, the defending national champions. They got Boogie Flam, former Hog, just from a year ago. How crazy that ended up happening in the offseason, thinking he was going to be going in the NBA. Was in the NBA draft. You thought he would stick in there, maybe be a late first-round pick. Instead, he U-turns back to college. He had put himself in the portal. There was no room for him in the position group at Arkansas. As crazy as that sounds, it makes sense, and we've beaten that horse to death. But off to Florida. 4th ranked Florida, according to Rothstein, and Arkansas will play that on the road. You hosted Bama last year. Now you get Bama on the road, and Rothstein has them just outside, right behind Auburn. Auburn 15th, Bama at number 16, according to Rothstein. So when you add it all up, those headline games, and I picked them out because all those teams are ranked. Rothstein has 7 SEC teams in his top 25 preseason, including Arkansas. And so those are 6 teams I just rattle off that are ranked and I count those as my headliners in these matchups. And you play Auburn twice. You get 7 matchups against 6 ranked teams. in SEC play. And again, we're in June still. We'll see how the landscape even shifts by the time preseason rankings come out for AP and coaches, and it probably in late October, somewhere in there, right before the season starts. And then we know all kinds of things happen, and teams don't. Some are overrated, some are underrated. A lot of stuff shifts. But for now, this is what it looks like. We're talking about it now. The matchups came out today, so let's talk about it. So let's go through the whole thing now. Let's pretend like we're just starting from scratch, and let's go through all 18 games. The home and aways are Auburn. You know that. We just went through that. LSU and Missouri. LSU and Missouri have consistently been that for Arkansas. And then last year, because you added two teams, you kept an 18-game schedule, but you went from 5 home and aways, with 3 of those being permanent and 2 of those shifting, interchangeable every year when the matchups were announced, to last year when you added the extra 2. Even though you kept 18 games, you went from 5 home and aways to only 3. And it looks like LSU and Missouri just continue to stay on there. A&M was the third one that came off, and Texas slotted in last year, and now Texas has rotated off. So for now, we can assume, unless the league expands to 20 games at some point, that LSU and Missouri are just kind of permanent home and away, and then the third one's going to alternate. Again, last year Texas, now it's Auburn. But LSU and Missouri back in the home and away. Mixed feelings about that, because I don't know. Missouri was better than I gave them credit for last year. They ended up being an NCAA tournament team and a really good team, and Arkansas split games there. Arkansas split games against a not very good LSU team, and that loss on the road was part of that 1-6 start in SEC play, and that was one you really, should have won, should have found a way to get that one done. But again, you're playing home and away against both of those. Again, dates, TV designations, game times, all that, we don't know that yet. That comes later. It gives more perspective and context to this conference schedule. It's not just who you play, but when do you play them? Where are those brutal stretches where they put back-to-back road games or back-to-back home games, or sometimes you play 3 in a row at home every once in a while. So you just never know how it's going to land. We just know what the matchups are and where they are, and how many times you play a team. Again, the home games: Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas. I mentioned those, and you play 9 at home and 9 on the road. So Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas. After that, you get Texas A&M, Vanderbilt under new management, by the way. Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina. So, this is a great home schedule for Arkansas, in my opinion, simply because you get Big Blue in there, Big Blue Nation. That's going to be wild. That could be one of the more memorable atmospheres and build-ups and anticipation. And whether the game's a dud or not, you just need to win it with everything else. Again, Tennessee, one of the standards at the top of the league the last several years, a team that made it to the Elite Eight. We talked about the Final Four entries, but Tennessee was one of the teams that made it to the Elite Eight again, back-to-back seasons. So you've got the Volunteers in Bud Walton Arena. And anytime it's Texas, again, Rothstein has them ranked top 25 coming in. So there's maybe a little more significance if by then truly that's a team that's, but looks like it's headed towards an NCAA tournament, and it's a quad 1 or 2 level value even at home, whether or not it's technically ranked top 25 by then, but it's Texas, so it's always a big deal. A&M, Vandy, and South Carolina, you expect Arkansas, with the strength of this team, to take care of business at home against those opponents. The away games, again, at Florida, that's not going to be easy. Florida will probably be picked by most to win the SEC. I figure Arkansas and Kentucky will probably be the most popular picks for the next 2, with teams, again, like Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, right there in the pecking order, in some order in that top tier of the league when we look at preseason projections. But Florida and Bama on the road, Ole Miss on the road. Man, Chris Beard, his Rothstein's got him ranked in the 30s. I'm not so sure about that. I'm not so sure. Ole Miss was a Sweet 16 team this past year, and beat Arkansas twice. Beat them in Bud Walton Arena, and then beat them in the SEC tournament. We know how that game ended. Arkansas had its chances in both outings and didn't get it done. But Ole Miss, that'll be a tough one there. That probably, I was borderline including that in my headliners, but I didn't. Mississippi State on the road. We know Chris Jans and the job he's done there. That's always tough in Starkville. Oklahoma, Porter Moser has had Arkansas's number for both the previous coaching staff and in at least the first matchup at Bud Walton Arena against John Calipari. So, that's another one that could be tough. And then Mike White getting Georgia to the NCAA tournament. Arkansas barely won that game again. It's a different season. Arkansas's retention's better than most. This Arkansas team, predictably, when you look at some of these road games, you'll think, okay, Arkansas's got a great shot at this, but the SEC and road play is brutal. And all of these teams have really, when you look at it, Arkansas only picked up, let's see, 2 wins against that group last year. Those 9, when you look at those 9 matchups, and again, the road games against Auburn, LSU, and Mizzou, if you counted LSU and Mizzou, Arkansas actually picked up 2 more, got 4 wins out of the 9, but against those opponents. But when you look at the actual road matchups, Arkansas beating Kentucky, you don't get them on the road this year. You beat Texas on the road, you don't get the Longhorns this year on the road. You beat Vandy on the road last year, you don't get the Commodores on the road. So the road matchups, when you look at just how they fared last year, whether it was home or away, were not so great. All right, so when we break this down, we said you're going to play 7 games against 6 SEC ranked teams because you get Auburn twice. That's why you get 7 out of 6. 4 of those will be at home. Again, Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Texas. 3 are on the road: Auburn, Florida, and Bama. When you go back to this talking point of playing each of the Final Four teams, again, you're playing a total of 5 games against them because you're getting 2 against Auburn. And when you start putting in the non-conference games that we know about, we know, according to Rothstein's Top 45, when you drill it down to a Top 25, you've got Houston ranked 2nd, Duke 9th, Louisville 17th, Michigan State 21st. So when you add that into what we know about the 18 games in the SEC, and we know Arkansas is also going to play Baylor, probably at home. We're expected to play in non-conference play. Rothstein has the Bears ranked 45th. And then a home game against UCA in early November. November 11th is when that's slated for. So we know of 6 matchups in terms of by name. We know there's going to be a game in Dallas. We'll assume that's a high major, possibly, if not probably, a top 25 ranked team. But for just the games and the matchups that we know and how Rothstein has them ranked top 25, and you add in the SEC part of it, Arkansas has 11 games versus 10 top 25 ranked teams. That's non-conference and SEC teams. So 11 games for 10 ranked teams, again, because you're playing Auburn twice, and he's got Auburn ranked 15th. So that's just your regular season. And now, so that's 24 games we know about out of the total of 31 you can have. That means there's 7 unknown. One of those Arkansas will play in Dallas, according to Calipari. And then probably most of what's left, whether he adds one more high major opponent for non-conference, where they're already at 5 right now, right? Let's go back and do the math real quick. Number 2, Houston, December 20th in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center. Number 9, Duke in Chicago on Thanksgiving Day, November 27th. 17th ranked Louisville in Bud Walton Arena in the ACC SEC Challenge, December 3rd. 21st ranked Michigan State. We don't have a date for that, but that's on the road. And again, Baylor is your 5th high major, not ranked in the top 25. So if you add a 6 high major with 7 more games unknown, that means you're probably your final 6 then, or the other 6 will probably be mid-majors. And we'll see what the quality of that is. I'm not saying Arkansas can't get to 7 high majors in the non-conference play. I'd be surprised if they go that many. That mean more than half their 13 non-conference games were against high major opponents. And with the brutal as the SEC is, I would be surprised if they tilt it that much. But look, they're probably going to add a 6, and that's nearly half. That's a lot. And it looks more and more like what Auburn did last year. Remember what Auburn did? Just played a gauntlet in the non-conference before Auburn then went through and won the SEC regular season title. It's easy to remember how good Florida was, but Auburn was the SEC regular season champ. Florida beat Auburn on the road, and toward the end of the regular season. Then Florida won the SEC tournament. Then Florida won the national championship, but Auburn was really, really good. You're gonna have a home and away against the defending SEC regular season champ if you're Arkansas. So, and just kind of adding everything up, I mentioned 4 games at home in league play against ranked teams, 3 on the road. When you look at that breakdown in non-conference right now, you've got I have this written down and I have it somewhere kind of awkwardly. You've got 2 at neutral sites, again, Houston and Duke, Louisville at home, and Michigan State on the road. So you're kind of spreading it around when you look at the balance of this schedule. You don't have control over what the SEC does. You have control over your own scheduling. The ACC SEC Challenge just alternates each year. So coming into the season, as you're building your schedule, you'll know if you'll be playing that game at home or on the road. When you plan around that in the games that you can map out and say, okay, this year we're at home in that game, maybe we go ahead and add another away from home, whether it's neutral or a true road game. But it's pretty balanced. 2 neutral site games when you look at all 24 games against top 25 ranked teams according to Rothstein. Houston and Duke, neutral site, Louisville at home, Michigan State on the road, and you add that up with the conference games. So you've got 5 games against ranked teams at Bud Walton Arena, and one of those being Louisville as it stands now, what we know. And you've got 4 games on the road, including that Michigan State game. And then again, the couple of neutral sites against heavyweights, Final Four teams last year. So it's a pretty good balance when you look at how they've built the non-con and trying to understand what they'd probably have once the SEC schedule came out. All right, this is Kevin McPherson. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. We're kind of running through everything. We really haven't gone through the specific matchups with teams because really what we're trying to focus on. Mark spent 3 seasons at Houston, 1 at Arkansas, and then he played last year at Texas. But I think he had a season that was pretty abbreviated at Houston. And so I don't know what the pathway was. I think he got cleared. I believe he's returning for Texas. If I misspoke, I'll go back and check on that. The last I saw, I remember that he was due back. So we'll see. But really, we didn't leave a whole lot out. I just think, again, when you start thinking about the energy in Bud Walton Arena for some of these matchups, even if Baylor's not top 25, to get Baylor and Louisville, if you get Baylor and Bud, we've got to still figure out which one's the North Little Rock game. Not sure about that. It's usually a mid-major, but back in the day, Arkansas played high majors there, including Baylor once. So you just never know, but it seems like when it gets out there that maybe it's a Fayetteville game. But if you get Baylor and Louisville, I don't care what Baylor's ranked. They've been a standard for the Big 12 in college basketball the last handful of seasons, including a national title. We know that because Arkansas was one of the victims on the way there in the Elite 8. But Baylor and Louisville at home in non-conference, at minimum, we know about those. I don't know that we'll see another high major matchup in BWA for non-con. I doubt it. But you'll get Michigan State there the following year. So it's going to keep on keeping on. This is the John Calipari effect. But getting those matchups at home, and then you turn to league play, and it's Kentucky, teams like Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas, because Texas always matters. So we can say they're not really in the same level of some of those, but I disagree with that. I think it's always a big thing. But that's a handful of games. And not to mention what Arkansas might pull off in the exhibition season. It won't count, but there'll be a lot of energy and excitement. There always is. There were for Purdue and Kansas, and the place was packed. So, you're going to have probably one of your better season. Again, Auburn. I think I just left them out again and playing them at home because it's the home and away. But you're going to have those 4 SEC games plus the 2 at least Baylor and Louisville, and then whatever they pull off for the home exhibition game, which will probably be a big name, I assume. I don't know that for a fact, but you got a lot here, and arguably the best, set of home games when you start adding it all up in many years for the Arkansas Razorbacks. And so we know they sell the tickets. We know they sell out, but a lot of times, and especially in November, even some of the December games, we understand. I mean, the place holds nearly 20,000, and sometimes it looks like it's half that or maybe a little more than half, not 2/3. but this gives you an opportunity with a team that's going to be projected around the top 10, at least top 15 coming into the season, a lot of expectations. And now you're starting to see more and more of the kind of matchups that will bring fans and put those butts in seats. And I think that's a good thing. So these things jump out to me when I start really looking ahead and thinking about the season. From a competitive standpoint, the retention Arkansas's had goes a long way to thinking Arkansas is going to win its share of these games. The majority at home and probably a good chunk on the road. That's another good thing. When you're putting together a brutal schedule, man, you better have the guns to go out there and win some games and build your resume. You're not just trying to have a bunch of quality losses like North Carolina did and edge your way into a play-in game. You want to have the bullets to go out there and build up the kind of resume that says, okay, even if we lose 6, 7, 8 games, we're still going to be a top 3, 4, or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. You're not looking for, a fourth consecutive season of being underwater in SEC play. And part of why you schedule non-conference with more difficulties maybe to get yourself ready. But I think the level of retention, the talent you're bringing in from the high school level, and what you did in the portal, it all makes sense. The biggest question marks, as we keep saying, is, and we said it last year, and it's kind of the same talking point this year, is depth on the front line. Seems like there's less of that right now in terms of who you really believe you're going to go to war with heavy minutes and roles and impact, game in and game out, and then three-point shooting. But I think year 2 in this program with Calipari, and for a DJ Wagner, it's year 3 with Calipari. When you look at the guys that came back, again, I think that's the key. I think that's the key to think why this scheduling makes sense, making it tougher out of conference. Today we were focused on conference, but now we're trying to marry it in and make it all make sense. I understand what the thought process here is, I think, and it makes sense to me. I'm like, oh boy, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have. They're making this too hard. No, and then later we can reassess it and go, you know what? McPherson, you were wrong. They weren't as good as you thought they were. They weren't as good as the preseason prognosticators thought they were going to be. And they played, they made, they set up a gauntlet that, put them back on the bubble. So everything's relative, right? I think part of the discourse here is talking about guys like Ziegler and Tremont Mark, who I brought up, who have been around the college game forever. Trevor Brazil's about to enter season 5. He's about to enter season 5. Now he was we know he missed a lot of games, and he probably qualified for that extra season. But he was also I think he was he a COVID qualifier anyway? He might have been. So he may have coverage both ways. But this will just be season 5, and you're looking at guys trying to play 6, 7 seasons now, and that's kind of interesting, isn't it? All right, we're 28 minutes in. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm Kevin McPherson. Just to run it down again a little more cleanly: Auburn, LSU, and Missouri home and away. So you have Bud Walton Arena and then road. Kentucky, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt, and South Carolina, all at home. In addition to the 3 we just mentioned, because you play 9. And then the one-off road games are Florida, Alabama, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Oklahoma, and Georgia, in addition to the 3 home and away opponents to get to 9. So that's what was released today. And if you thought that Arkansas was going to get I actually like it that at least one of the home and away series for Arkansas, because LSU and Missouri, again, they're not going to be household names coming into the preseason in terms of, a lot of steam behind their names and mascots in terms of college basketball and what people are talking about. But Auburn will be. Even if they're not as highly regarded as they were last year, when as much as they lost, you're a returning, defending Final Four team that won the SEC outright, and you're coming in with top 15 preseason rankings, most likely when we get to the point where we're looking at Associated Press and Coaches Poll. So that's something I like. All right, I am signing off. We're not going to quite get to 30 minutes. We're going to focus on the Diamond Hogs. Here's a shocker. Here's some intel for you. I might be writing one of the post-game articles for Hogville tonight for the Diamond Hogs game. We'll see. I'm not sure about that, but that may be going down. Ole Miss is loaded as well. Yeah, I kind of alluded to the fact that Ole Miss is one of the teams to keep an eye on that's maybe not considered top 25 quality right now. That's probably the one I'd really keep an eye on there, and some others. But we'll talk more about some of the matchups and more about some of the individual matchups with Arkansas and some of these teams at a later time. We just want to go through the schedule today. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. If we need to break in later, we will. If not, we'll be back on tomorrow. Until then, take care of yourselves. We appreciate all of you. See you soon.